Hi, this is Beth Lawton with Alexandria Living Magazine, and we're here with Paul Roberts of Sand and Steel Fitness to talk about a number of things today, from stress eating and stress baking to how to exercise safely while we're under the stay-at-home order, running, and a bunch of other stuff. Hi,
Great.
Paul.
Hi, how's it going?
Good. How are you?
I'm good. Well, thanks for inviting me. When I looked at some of the questions that your readers were getting, one of the things that people are already noticing is, of course, their kind of eating habits have changed. I've been seeing more and more cakes on my Instagram channel. I haven't seen flour in Whole Foods in the last 4 weeks.
It
Uh,
is getting impossible to find yeast at any
yes.
grocery store, too. So there's definitely a lot of stress baking going on.
And with everything going on and the fact that people are going to have different types of psychological trauma associated with this, not feeling good about your body just makes it all that much worse, both from a physical point of view, and then your clothes are not fitting right, and then that adds to it. It's something people get depressed about all the time. And we're going to go over why that's occurring and maybe some ways that you can help stem the tide in terms of work to do once all this stay-at-home order gets lifted. And so I took a look at a lot of the reasons that this is going on. Certainly the switch from working at home and from working at work. When you're at home, your schedule gets derailed a lot and you have a lot more time. A lot of people have had their hours cut, and so they have more free time. And something that people used to do is they'd go to the gym, right? Or they'd go to a bar or something like that, and they would do more social things. They would do sports. A lot of people play sports, and those are all limited as well. And so people are turning to cooking as both an activity and also because of the kind of positive temporary effect it has eating these type of things. It sounds like it's a great thing to do. I've been wanting to learn how to do this cooking that I see on the Food Network or whatever it might be. Let me spend the time now. But then you have all this food that you shouldn't be eating, particularly when you can't really exercise easily. And it's probably not the wisest of ideas to do. Um, and why are I think people often bake not because they want the food. Honestly, that's why you cook, right? It's not necessarily you like cooking. I certainly don't like doing dishes, but you want these things. And why do we want those things? That was kind of like the crux question when I was talking to different people. I called some of my colleagues that are dietitians, and I got to this, and it really had to do with like when we have a lot of stress in our lives, there are three main ways humans deal with them: social interaction, which has been limited a lot; exercise, which has been drastically reduced; eating foods that are unhealthy is another big one; and then meditation and this kind of mindfulness practice. And in the United States, at least, most people, when it comes to those type of activities, church is certainly a big place people do that. They do yoga. They do a lot of group activities. They're group led, um, and people aren't doing that anymore. And so everything's been taken from you except for cooking. And so, so it's creating this environment that's easy to fall into, whether you're buying the foods pre-made, um, and then you're sad. People are sad. I've been sad many days, and you want something to make you feel better, and so you buy these addictive foods that everybody knows are addictive. That's why they make them that way. And then you wind up, kind of falling into the bad habits you worked so hard your life to prevent.
So, with the kitchen so close by, with everyone working from home, um, and all the stress and the sadness around coronavirus right now, what specific steps can people take to set some parameters around that so they're not gaining the coronavirus 20 that everyone's talking about?
The advice that I've been giving our members on this topic is it in some ways the same advice when I'm treating anybody who's having trouble with food addictions, right? It's a question of keeping a schedule. Humans need schedules, and at least nowadays we do, and we're used to it. So starting your work, whatever work that is, at certain times, from your day, and then scheduling your meals. One of the ways we gain a lot of weight, and this has been well studied in many times, is this kind of absent-minded eating. It's well known, well documented. It is super easy to do when you're stuck at home all day. And so you need to structure your meals, and when you structure your meals, it's easier for you to be aware of what your calories are. Certainly, the practices of food journaling are even more effective now in this environment than others, and they're easier to do because you're preparing your food. One of the, you know, you can turn it around and say, one of the obstacles that our members have for losing weight. A lot of people eat at restaurants. It's hard to know exactly, unless you go to a really big chain that the law requires them to have a nutrition guidance. Most restaurants don't publish it. Most of them are privately owned. There's no laws to require it in Virginia anyway. California and other states more so. Um, you're at home. Now you can, because you know exactly what you're putting in your food and you have much more control. We should be having the corona minus 20, when you look at it in that way. And so you are empowered to do this. It's the acceptance that yes, things are bad for financially, they're bad for people's families, they're bad for if you have people and working hot, it's bad. And you don't have to say, well, things are bad, so I can change my diet because I'm sad. Because you're just going to be more sad later. You can change it for the good now more easily than you ever could because you have control over everything that you're eating because we can't eat out at restaurants. So that would be
I've
the
heard,
biggest tip I'd give you.
okay. I've heard too that even doing something as easy as moving your desk to somewhere that is not the dining room table might be a good way, just so you're not in view of the kitchen and that food isn't there all the time.
I find for people who are very busy, the easiest way, if if you're busy and you still have, a decent income, the meal delivery companies, and there's tons of them. There's tons of them locally in Alexandria, and then there's ones that are national. There's ones in Virginia. That's what I've done because, you know, if I don't want to cook, I don't want to go to the grocery store where everybody's, there's lots and lots of people there. They're all pre-portioned for you, and then you could just eat them, especially if you're busy and you don't want to take a break to have a meal. you know, they're pre-made, and so you just heat them up. Are they the most healthy things in the world? They are, given the costs, the requirements that they have. They do the best, honestly, that they can. They can't
Mm-hmm.
ship you a whole ton of vegetables. It takes too much volume, and they're expensive, and they go through, so they give you a little bit. But, for what they charge, given their situation, they do a good job. You
Okay.
know, it so that's I like the idea of certainly having separation if you can. Like I have a little one bedroom apartment. That's not so easy because my
Nope.
desk is in my living room. But to the degree that you can do that, certainly it mentally helps you, have a meal versus mealing anytime.
Okay. I've seen a lot of people out walking on the trails, running for the first time in maybe a long time. It's coronavirus hit right at spring when the weather is getting nice out, which is great, actually. I'm glad if this had to happen. Unfortunately, I'm glad it didn't happen in January when it was 35 and raining. But a lot of people are suddenly getting out there and exercising because now they have the time to do it. Can you talk about exercising outside, what the options are? Is it safe? How to start running without injury? Kind of what are the options that people have now that all of our gyms are closed?
hmm Well, let's tackle them in two different parts because one is
Mm-hmm.
like kind of exercise that you can do now that, or even outdoor exercise that you can do now that, gyms are closed and things like that, versus running itself from like what to look for from mechanics because they're kind of separate.
Okay.
Um, so yes, humans need movement. That's well documented. You have more health problems if you don't have it, and health fades very quickly without movement. In 2-3 weeks you can have significant drops down. Particularly, the older you are, the movement reduction is much like the effect is much faster. I've seen that time and time again. We have an older member who goes out for 2 weeks for whatever reason, they stop coming, and the drop is really big compared to people that are younger. Um, so you do need to move. So that you can't say, well, I'm just not going to exercise for three months. That's going to cause a lot of problems. And it's harder. So, okay, so what should we do? You know, honestly, I think the best in this area, the best activity you can do is probably hiking because it's low population density. The hiking injuries people get are almost always technical injuries, like you fell on a rock or something. It's something to do with the environment. There aren't a lot of hiking injuries that, like, I hurt my shoulder because I was hiking the wrong way type skill stuff, and that's very low. Um, I think your mountain biking in the same way for the same reason is good. Um, but what I see a lot around here, because it's more convenient, is people walking around
Mhm.
the area. And the real thing you have to be aware of, and there's been new studies about this, is that that 6 foot radius that people want you to keep, or 2 meter radius, applies when you're not moving. When you're moving, the radius is much larger, and you don't have control. You don't have control if somebody's running faster behind you. You know, there's different amounts of people like following this and understanding it and believing it and whatever. And when you go outside and you choose to run in places that are really fun and awesome looking around the area, like the mall and other places, the big running trails, you can't control people coming behind you. There's no way to do it. Um, and the how contagious the virus is it's massively. When I spoke to some of my friends at GSK and other type of treatments, it's one of the most contagious viruses ever. Um, the reason that everybody isn't dying is it doesn't kill that many percentage of the people, but you're very, very likely to get it. And the reality is with the whole, lack of shortage of medical supplies, you know, you're not supposed to reuse masks. But if you don't, you won't have one.
Right.
So what are you going to do, right? You're going to reuse it. Otherwise, you have nothing, right? And I see people like certainly for some reason nowadays, instead of an N95 mask, well, handkerchief is good enough, right? It's probably better than nothing. How much
Right.
better is it? Would it stop the transmission? Nobody knows those answers or what is the
Right.
reduction,
And
but people are telling, well, use something because something is better than nothing.
then nothing.
But because you have something, that doesn't mean that you're safe. The other thing with running that was, which is a lot of people are doing, you breathe a lot more heavily. And so that is increasing the amount of these virus particles in the air, in the area. So then you have somebody who's laboring, breathing behind you, and you're kind of restricted. So you have to be very careful about where you run,
Mhm.
so you don't put yourself at risk or people in your family.
So one thing that has come up a number of times is virtual training. I know that several gyms and yoga studios, including Sand and Steel Fitness, are now offering virtual training options where people can train inside their homes with some guidance. Can you talk a little bit about that and how it works and what people should expect from that type of a program?
So this brings us to virtual personal training. With this fitness program, we do an intake with you and we figure out what kind of workouts you need really to improve your strength. We build them with the equipment that you have at home and the space that you have available. We do the workouts with you in real time. We make corrections. We update your program and we make it more challenging as you get better, and the program evolves essentially over time. What makes training just twice a week so effective is we really build the workouts at your weak points, and so we engineer the workouts to target those areas that you haven't been targeting in your own fitness to help support what you're doing and to kind of improve your overall mechanics. People's weaknesses tend to be the areas they don't work as much, and so we will strengthen those areas and design your program so that you can move a lot better with less pain by building the workout to whatever kind of specifications you want, plus our analysis based on what we see that you need. We talk with you, we show you the program, you get it in advance, you get to prepare for it, and then we do the workout together, making modifications in real time. One of the problems we encountered very early on was that everybody has very different equipment. You'd think people have the same type of exercise equipment. No, it's completely different. Some people have dumbbells, you might have a yoga block, you could have a kettlebell, you probably don't have a barbell, you might want to use that exercise bike, but Everybody's different equipment makes programming very difficult. Normally, personal trainers will build a template workout and then scale that workout to the individual. In this case, in this virtual environment, you have to build each workout for the whole program one at a time, and you have to design it not only to the client's goals, but to the noise limitations they have, the space limitations, and now you have to build it according to the exercise equipment that they have on hand. And when we started doing that, all of a sudden, it worked. That was the secret sauce for getting personal training to work at home. You need a customized program with the equipment that you have available, and then anything becomes possible. So let's talk about on-demand programming. That's the $15 a month program that you see flooding your Instagram channels. So you basically buy a program and they give you videos on how to do it. And in a way, that's kind of like watching a video, except it's more interactive. You can get little videos of the different pieces. It's much more cost effective. You
Mm-hmm.
give the workouts. Sometimes they're already pre-made, the workouts, and then you have a video showing it. You may or may not have a work-along video as well. And if you have really good mobility and you're in good shape, it's one of the most cost-effective ways of doing it. Usually they'll tell you what equipment you need in advance. You fit yourself to the program and you follow along. That business model has been around for 30 years. It's Beachbodies and Les Mills and all these ones. These companies have been doing it, which is one of the reasons we did not pursue that. As great as Santa still is, we cannot compete with Les Mills and these other really big ones in terms of budget, marketing, audience, penetration, all these things. And it is, it's inexpensive and it's great if you don't have any injuries. But what most people are doing, so those are like the two kind of ends, very, very, very customized, more expensive, $80 a session, $15 a month, right? Those are your two ends. In the
Yep.
middle is what a lot of people are doing in this area, and it's kind of virtual fitness classes. And they're done live mostly. Some of them are on demand where they're recorded and you watch a recorded one. And you'll have a workout parameter. Like we offer a virtual yoga. You'll know what the yoga flow is and you'll join it. It's much easier for the instructor to give you real corrections. I think a lot of people are not appreciating the difference between watching a yoga or mobility video or a training video versus having an instructor there. Um, when I've been doing it, I didn't think it would work that well, but I can see what I need to see in terms of movement. I can tell a certain member to move their body or to move their camera. I can't see what it is. Um, and it does work. Technology made it easier than I expected. I also thought it'd be too hard for people to get this kind of stuff, but they made it easy to use and you get a lot more out of it. Um, Another thing that goes along with the questions about health was if you have a video DVD, which nobody has, but if you have like the video subscriptions nowadays, right?
Yep.
I'll do it later. I'll do it at 5. Oh, I didn't get to it today. I'll do it tomorrow. You have this procrastination.
Yep.
Classes, you have social engagement. You can actually talk to the members. You can see them suffering with you, which is important. You can talk to the coaches, and it is interactive, and it is very much like being in a real class. Um, it is a much more effective service than I thought it would have been. I was quite shocked about how well it works. It uses the same times that we're used to. So at 6 o'clock, we have this class, and at 7, we have that class. And
Mm-hmm.
you go to the class and you log in, and you get a lot more out of it. And it also, you've done your exercise for the day. I can check that off. I did my hour, and now I can go back to work, or I can go, hopefully not to bake anything, but whatever other things you maybe need to homeschool your children. And those
Yep.
things. And it does really work, and I do encourage a lot of people. There's a number of really great boutique studios in Alexandria that are doing this. They
Mm-hmm.
are all in, financial strain from this, and they've put a lot of work into doing this. So, I would pick one, especially if you have a job that's still paying you. They need your business,
Mm-hmm.
and they're working extra hard. It's a great time. Always want to work with a business that really appreciates you. They all appreciate you right now.
Yep.
So the other question you asked was about running and safety for running, right?
Yeah. So would this be a good time, kind of, to start, say, a Couch to 5K program? The weather is nice outside, even if you're running circles around your house to stay in your yard. Is this a good time to kind of to start something like that?
It depends. Um, and it depends on what your mobility looks like and your strength levels. Running is one of the more common things people get injured at. It's well known if you look at any running magazine, there's at least one article on some injury and how to treat that injury.
Mhm.
And a lot of people haven't been doing any exercise or they haven't been running. And the number of people that started running is tremendous. Spring is always higher in our area,
Right.
but it's like 3 times. And all the physical therapists are like, yes, I'm getting all this business coming in a month or two. That's what I see. Physical therapy studios like, we just did our expansion, we have more rooms, we're all ready for the people coming in June, because it happens, and it's
Yep.
true. What I would, if you have the money, hire a running coach. There's a lot of running
Okay.
coaches. We certainly do it, and but we're not the only company in their area. There's probably 10 at least that look at running technique, and they will teach you what to work on. There is a lot of form to running properly, and just because you can run, that doesn't mean you're running correctly or safely. You're
Mhm.
doing a running pattern, but the pattern itself is not sustainable, and it's going to lead to injuries if not corrected. It's kind of like, if your tires are out of alignment on a car, you can still drive, but it's going to create mechanical problems for your car if it's severe enough. And, you know, most people have no idea what they look like when they run. How many people have had somebody film them and then no, very few people unless you're like really training for something. So you just go and do it because I need to exercise.
Yep.
you know, it doesn't cost that much to get a diagnostic. Like, most people in our area will charge you, anywhere from $70 to $150 for an hour to give you a
Hmm.
diagnostic and show you. And
Okay.
they'll certainly want to then say, okay, well, there's these problems. I can fix it. It's going to take more sessions. Certainly, like a physical therapist, take more sessions. Or maybe they'll tell you, you know what, you're good. You're running well, and I don't need to make any changes. And so that information can prevent you from getting an injury, which nobody wants right now.
Right. And is that something that can be done from 6 feet away or more?
Yeah. So the way we've been doing it, because that what a lot of what we do with how to do that is we video you, and then we
Hmm.
play the video frame by frame, and we show the faults because running is very fast, and so every step is fast. So how do you explain what's going on in real time? You can't. You slow it down.
Right.
And so what you do, like we have both an Android phone and an iPhone, and we use a native share like AirDrop to share the video. Or now I've been using Zoom actually. I just put it up on Zoom and I play the video, and you go frame and you show the pieces that's wrong. And then once you see it as a coach, there's drills to correct every single running fault just about, or what mobility exercises or strength exercises you need to do to start to strengthen it. So you can do it 6 feet away. It certainly changes the fact. Normally I would just go over, but here it is, and you go right next to the person, you show them on your phone. So what we've done is we just do that. We use mostly iPhones, and I use the Apple TV, and I do the
Hmm.
virtual share, so it's big, and then
Yep.
they can see, okay, this is the problem. And it's nice because actually, even though the gyms are closed, the order in Virginia, as other states are different. In Virginia, businesses can still operate; they just can't take people into their gym, and they have to keep people under 10. So a private running lesson outside is not illegal underneath any executive orders. Um, and it's relatively safe if you're six feet away as much as can be, and so that's a great option. Um, I think one of the things too to look for, and to give you some ideas about running, has to do with things like there's a lot of technical pieces to it. I'll drop in the video. I wrote in a whole big article about all the technical pieces of running, from the
Hmm.
concept of falling, the heel strike to the cadence. There's a lot of little pieces to it. Um, but if you look through an article like that, and other people have written similar articles,
Hmm.
how much of this stuff when you read it is new to you? That will give you an idea of probably what your running form would look like. And, give it a little bit of respect because it's not that easy to
Hmm.
do correctly. And it will stop you from getting injured if you make these kind of changes.
Okay. So back to the overeating, the stress baking, all of those things. It sounds like either doing exercise at home with virtual classes, that sort of thing can help. Meditation can help. picking up hobbies that maybe require both hands can probably help. And it sounds like not mindlessly eating while you're on all those Zoom calls are good ways to go.
Some things we're seeing at home is this, a lot of people bought every piece of equipment available, right? All the big fitness, Perform Better, Rogue, all these companies, they're all sold out for like the next 2 months, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because most of them get equipment from China. That's where they get it from.
Yep.
And China is having the same problem. So we have no masks and we have no weights in this country and no
Yep.
hair dye, apparently. Um, so I'm seeing a lot of this like do-it-yourself videos coming up on YouTube and other places. And
Mm-hmm.
I think it's a terrible idea. And most professional trainers agree. I'm on a lot of like Facebook groups with like, 500 other trainers and stuff. And
Uh-huh.
why is this so terrible? Um, it is very hard to exercise correctly. There's a lot of technique to it.
Yep.
So then you want to take, a difficult activity and add an unstable self-made apparatus to it and introduce all sorts of other limitations, right?
Yep.
I mean, there are those people, and I've seen them, they make a whole Smith machine out of wood, and God bless them, that they have this talents to have everything, right? But the normal people in Alexandria generally, we don't make stuff that much. Um, and exercise equipment can hurt you if it's
Mm-hmm.
unstable and if it's not made correctly. You probably don't know all the requirements for something to work correctly. A simple example, is a barbell. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
people don't appreciate that inside the collars there are these bearings that spin, and they need to spin to prevent torque from building up on the weights, which will hurt your shoulders. And so if you make your home barbell, you're probably not going to build a rotary system in there or appreciate why that's needed, even though every commercial barbell on the planet has that for that reason. Um, you may not be able to make effective collars that would work or test the resistances of these
Mm-hmm.
things. Um, I don't see that many barbells being made, but the one thing I do see a lot of people trying to make are like sandbags. I've even seen a lot of companies that make programs, people recommending those. Um, if you can get a professional sandbag like Brute Force or another company that makes them, like
Mm-hmm.
I think there's a Wonder Bag or something. I forget what the other one was. Great, but you need multiple weights because the exercises are different. So you need like 3 bags, which
Yep.
makes it much more expensive. Now you're looking at like $600 or so. Sandbags are inherently one of the hardest exercises to work with because they're
Mm-hmm.
very unstable. Yes, our military uses them, and I use them to train military people all the time because they have to, right? Because you have to carry guns and backpacks and stuff like that. And so they train you to deal with an unstable load. That's why they were made.
Mm-hmm.
Most people without a lot of training cannot effectively do that. You're just increasing your risk. Certainly then if more so if you're putting random objects in there, like let's add some water in here and we have some clothes over here and it's all unbalanced. And then we're going to use it for purposes. It's not even like I've seen people try and do like kettlebell swings with sandbags.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't do that with a professional bag. I wouldn't do that myself. And I'm seeing people do this and like, oh, I felt a burn. I'm like, yeah, you felt a burn in your back as it's not being done correctly.
Yep.
And so I don't, I don't really think it's necessary. If you don't have any equipment, right, and you don't have a car that you can go hiking, I would pick some of the videos that are just cardio based, whether that's your kind of dance type ones.
Mm-hmm.
Um, it may not necessarily be the fitness that you like the most, but it'll at least be something. You
And
know,
it sounds like you're less likely to get injured with that sort of thing.
the one that I'm the biggest proponent of is honestly either mobility focused training. There's a lot of companies that do that, and
Mm-hmm.
yoga. Most people know what yoga is. They've been to different types of yoga classes.
Yep.
Yoga is pretty safe, and it's very easy if it's a virtual class for the instructor to see faults in that because we're on a fixed, like you have your yoga mat, and as long
Mm-hmm.
as you position the yoga mat in your camera field of view, you can see everything. Or the
Yep.
instructor will tell you, flip your mat so I can see the side. Easy.
Mm-hmm.
And with the mobility training that goes on too, that's also the same case. Usually you're on a piece of mat and you get to work certain areas of the body, whether it's shoulders or hips or whatever. And those are kind of your least likely to get injured, and you still get some cardio workout of it. You'll find with yoga, you have your alignment style yoga and your
Mm-hmm.
vinyasa style yoga.
Yep.
So make sure you get what you're looking for when you're looking at classes. Some of them are higher intensity. They're hard to learn. If you're new to yoga, start with your alignment classes because they'll teach you how to do the poses. There's no point in doing it fast if you're doing it wrong. And so go with your alignment. Everybody will say beginner because they want to get new clients. So beginner friendly. Everybody's going to say that. That's the reality. You know, it's a
Yep.
competitive business. So they can say anybody can join, no experience necessary. All this. Well, talk to the owners or the instructors who are available because they need clients. Trust me.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and ask them: Is it an alignment-based class? Is it a position-based class? Is it a flow-based class? What's the time for each movement? This all gets built out in advance. You want, when you're learning yoga, you know, 2-3 minutes per pose. So
Mm-hmm.
the instructor has time to give you corrections, you get to work it, and it's slower. And you need that before you can do vinyasa, which is flow-based yoga, because you're just going to do the positions incorrectly. And the instructor, if he has a few people or she has a few people in the class, she can't give you that many corrections because then she winds up breaking up the flow.
Mm-hmm.
And so she can give you 1 or 2 cues and you keep going and you're like, what did they mean by turn my shoulder out? And you try to, but you're like, did I do it? They didn't tell me. And so you run into that kind of trouble. So
Mm-hmm.
that's the way I would learn yoga. It's probably one of the most effective ways to stay in shape in a limited space with noise issues in the apartments, right? You can't be jumping up and down, at least in my building and in
Yep.
most buildings. And so yoga has that. And your cats will love it because, cats and goats
Right.
really love yoga and
Yep.
they're making a big appearance in a lot of videos.
So you went to Johns Hopkins, and you said when we were talking earlier that you had talked to a number of your alumni classmates who are doctors, virologists, that sort
Mhm.
of thing. Can you give us just 2 or 3 really interesting things that you've learned about this novel coronavirus that you didn't know from watching the news
Mhm.
previously?
Well, one of the things that I learned from talking with them is about, how contagious it is. And almost everybody in the United States is going to get the coronavirus. However, most people are asymptomatic, so they don't know that they got it. The governments are operating by closing areas or parts of the country is that they know the reason that it's not going to just come back once we reopen stuff as much is you're still probably getting affected and they wanted to slow stuff down so everybody's not affected at exactly the same time because there is a certain percent population that gets very, very sick.
Mm-hmm.
It's very, what they had told me was it's one of the only viruses that they can recall, like since maybe polio, that has asymptomatic, very sick, and dead. I mean, it has the whole
The whole
spectrum and it
range.
doesn't, it does discriminate based on age for whatever reason. Older people get more severe symptoms on average.
Mm-hmm.
And it also has a problem when you have certain health injuries. Um,
Yeah.
they don't understand yet why it affects the lungs or how that mechanism works so much.
Mm-hmm.
But myself included, was worried, well, how long is this going to go for, right? I mean, when they reopen it, was everything about fact we're going to go through this again?
Yep.
And it does have an end because most people are going to have an immunity to it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Kind of popular decision when I ask people, like, okay, do we think by like June 10th is the order in Virginia,
Right.
is the curve going to be flattened? And I know you don't know, but you know more than me because this is your field, right? And what I got was 50-50. They felt the date
Okay.
was reasonable, they could see it ending a little earlier, end of May, right now, based on what they're saying, and it might not too. The other point that they and it's interesting because I'm an attorney and I didn't think about this, but these biologists came up with this legal point, which is very interesting to me, was it they know that it's going to hit the rural areas later. That's
Mm-hmm.
what's going to happen.
Yep.
And so, what is the state supposed to do when its cities are okay and now you're having flare ups in small areas? Is the
Mm-hmm.
state going to keep the order closed or not? And that doesn't really have an answer yet. So, we may see an extension because, while maybe the big areas in like Northern Virginia, like Arlington and Fairfax, high density, okay, it's come in, it's flattened out,
Yep.
but then the outside areas are having flare ups. What is the governor going to do about that? I think he's thinking about that, and he'll have to figure out what he's going to do if it's going to be city-based, because a lot of people criticize the federal government for not doing a global one, right?
Mm-hmm.
Well, some states have done this, and some states have relied on the individual municipalities to do this, and so
Yep.
that's kind of an unknown as to
Yep.
what the best procedure is going to be. But they did feel that the general 3-month stay-at-home order should be sufficient, and we should see, the number of people going down, and you'll probably be immune, and you're probably just already sick, and you're asymptomatic, and you're
Hmm.
not going to get hit with it. And that was probably the biggest take-home point that I learned about the virus. And then just how contagious it was. That was one of the things everyone told me. They're like, it has almost been no viruses, like, not even like the H1N1 and the
Hmm.
bird flu and the swine flu. This one was
Yep.
like out of the parks contagious.
Uh-huh.
And they also told me it's been the only global pandemic ever that's on all continents, even like
Yep.
Greenland and stuff like that. And that was
Yep.
another big thing. And that gave me kind of perspective of how long that this should last and some of the fears that people have.
Hmm.
Like my grandma just felt like she's going to die for sure about this because she lives in a retirement area in Florida. People are sick
Yep.
in her community. She can't go anywhere. Well, most people don't get sick. That is the reality. And so you're not
Hmm.
waiting for death to come or some terrible flu. You
Yep.
probably won't get anything, but the reason they did this order was so those people who do get sick
Right.
can get treatment. The other thing they told me a lot about was what's happening with the medical staff, and they're seeing that there's no equipment, and where we missed the mark on not having our own domestic production
Hmm.
of medical equipment.
Yep.
Doctors are reusing lots of equipment because they don't have a choice, and then they're reinfecting patients,
Hmm.
and or if they don't help the patients, they die. So this is this very, very bad situation
Right.
on us not taking responsibility of having our own gowns, this personal medical supply, and the need for people to, if you have the means, to help make that stuff, or if you have it, to
Hmm.
donate it, because poor nurses and doctors are putting themselves at risk and their
Yep.
families to help other people, and that was a
Yep.
big thing they had told me too.
Yep. I have a childhood friend who is an ER nurse in Connecticut, and she caught it treating
Mhm.
other people. And she said she was not one of those people who was asymptomatic. She was down for 2 weeks with what felt like the flu. I mean, the body aches, the fevers, the chills, the coughing, difficulty breathing. It's not, while it might not be bad for some people, it could be like the flu or much worse for other people. And nobody wants to catch the flu or worse. So I think that there's a lot to be said for the social distancing and locking things down, because even colds are unpleasant. The flu is worse, and this is putting people in the ICU. So,
I did a very recent study of people running because
mm-hmm.
I went to the Memorial Bridge with the mask I happened to had bought for doing construction, and so I had a mask, and I took a look at how people were running
Mm-hmm.
when I knew we were going to do this meeting, and I found that a lot of people couldn't maintain their distance of
No.
2 meters because it wasn't possible with the hills and things like that. I also found that about 80% of people had one or more significant running faults in their technique. They underestimate how technical it is,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll get home and they wonder, well, why is my back getting sore? Maybe my back needs to be stronger, and it's a question of positioning and strengthening maybe your
Mm-hmm.
hamstrings so your back doesn't hurt. Um, and so when you think about running and starting to do that, if you're watching this video, about 75% of people didn't keep their distance. I looked
Mm-hmm.
about 400 people, so only about a quarter did. And only about 20% of those people were running without any significant running faults.
Yep.
So that puts your statistical likelihood in the 3 to 5% range. So if you can make time to do hiking or drive to some place where it's lower density
Mm-hmm.
and do some walking and hill walking, if you haven't been running, you really, it's going to be very hard to find a physical therapist in June. I can guarantee you that. In July, they are
Okay.
going to be so busy once this
Yep.
in-person stuff, and it's your summer is going to get damaged because you're going to have an injury that's going to
Okay.
make it difficult. And you don't always. The thing is with injuries from running, you don't always get a warning that like it's getting
Hmm.
sore and I can just stop and I'll be okay a couple days. Sometimes you just get a fast nerve impingement, or you hurt a meniscus in your knee or whatever it might be, and now you have a chronic condition that you have to manage.
Yep.
And so I like it. Sometimes you do get a warning, but not every time. And so that's a another big point to do.
Okay.
I mean, certainly if you have a pool, that's great, but certainly there's no public pools anymore. And so a lot of but biking, I can tell you this about biking. If you have a bike, biking is way safer
Okay.
than running for mechanically. Um, you know, Please don't bike in flip-flops. I see people doing that all the time. It if you ever buy biking shoes, they're super hard and stiff in the bottom. And the
Hmm.
reason for that is to prevent you from hurting your tendons in your feet and getting minor
Hmm.
fasciitis.
Yep.
So biking with very soft shoes is a really terrible idea. And so the harder sole shoes you can find, the better off you're going to be. I guess in conclusion and summary of what are some of the main points we talked about? Finding a way to exercise. You have to find a way to exercise. It's harder. It's harder for gyms. It's harder for everybody. You have to keep exercising, and you have to be careful about your diet, right? And your diet includes being careful about TV. The more TV you watch, and I've seen Facebook posts like, "I finished Netflix." It's like, and so if you're watching more TV, statistics clearly show you're going to eat more food. So you got to be very careful if you're choosing to watch more TV that you don't fit that pattern of eating more food, because we have commercials that tell you to eat food and all those things. And if you're not watching TV, the other reason people eat too much is that they're bored and they want to do something. So don't let yourself get bored, because you'll want to eat something when you're bored. That's a known thing. And if you're watching TV to prevent boredom, you're still going to eat more food. So make sure you have healthy options available,
Hmm.
which are hard to find. Um, that really helps. And
Yep.
just it's about mindfulness and awareness. And if you can track your food, it will make the biggest difference. You won't have to lose 20 pounds, because beach season's coming whenever they reopen their beaches, and that's kind of the reality. I
Yep.
really do appreciate, though, this opportunity to talk with you and to share
Yes.
everything that's been going on. Um, Hopefully, we got some good information out to everybody and gave them some good clues, and will help get some of the business and virtual training to the Alexandria studios that
Yep.
are all need some more support for that. And they're here to help you guys. So